Myrtha says, welcome, a warm welcome to everybody. And for those people who've been around for many weeks following our conference, and she's also thanking us translators, those people who transform her German. And I'd also like to thank all the colleagues who in the last few weeks who have brought so many wonderful contributions since I was last time here, and I'm happy to be working on their work. And I'd like to begin, as we did last time, where we started with ourselves. We're creating a space, we're creating an inner space, and this is perhaps where you are. Perhaps you want to move your chair, or you want to switch some electricity off. Create a space for myself, a place where I feel safe. And with M, we meet one another and share our experiences. I share something with you, and I receive something, I listen. M. M. And then I bring the process inward, I calm it down, and that which we share arrives in me. So these first three sounds of the evolutionary sequence are in themselves very rich. And as Theodore often says, that one is the most important. Each of these are most important. And I'm very happy to, when I'm working with other people. Last week, I was in Turkey in the earthquake zone, where we were there as a team. And in the streets, there were many children, 30, 40, 50 children, with whom we did all the different activities with the aim of stabilizing and giving them a grounded feeling after everything they've experienced. And even while we were there were all these floods and the people had to leave their tents. And they couldn't cope with living in a tent. And this working together with other people is so rich, because one works with the basics. When I see with children who want to paint, how does she create space with them? How does she create a space for the group so that in that moment there's a feeling of safety? And the outer space, so that the outer space is separate from the inner space, so much so that the inner space is safe and can then be enlivened with the soul. And then to observe, how do they take hold of the paintbrush? How do I prepare so that the child can pick up the paintbrush in an attentive way? Because afterwards they have to bring something onto the paper, put something on paper. Creating space, holding the inner space, awareness of each other, and then bringing the color or the form onto the paper. And I can see this if I'm working with a musician. How does he create the space in a surrounding where there's no roof over the head? There are perhaps hens and chickens and goats, and there's a lot of noise. And yet, despite all this, he's able to create an inner space that feels like an inner space for those children present. And then there's also this question, how do I take the instrument? How do I pick it up? How do I prepare that moment of taking the instrument, holding it? How do I hold it? And then I play the tone. I pick the chords or I stroke the bow. And so after B and M comes D. B, M, D. And that's just a little presence, a little sharing of how I connect and how we connect with one another. The colleagues who've prepared this, we don't speak Turkish and the children didn't speak English. And you just, through little drawings, little steps, how you can draw, little, create a nest and then draw the inner space yellow and draw around blue so that they have an inner space and an outer space inside this circle. And then I think, wow, that's just what B is like. It radiates from inside and from the outside is protected with a blue. And in this nest, a little bird comes to rest and they painted an egg. And then the content of the picture is something protected and safe with a feeling of safety. And so you can experience your work in other people's work. And in eurythmy, we have walking rhythms. And in the art, we have form drawing or colors and the music. And eurythmy is always connected with all the arts. And I always feel I'm connected with all of them. And the others feel connected to me. In Georgia, we walked the forms, and then the mathematics teacher did the Platonic bodies. So there's always this bridging with the other activities. And this is something very pleasing. And of course, you need a heart connection, a heart bridge between the colleagues, the adults, and the children. And of course, also the local adults, the local people working there. So for the children, last time we did rhythms. And today we're going to do this for adults. And these exercises can be used for older children. And if you trust yourself, then you can teach them. But the children need to have a certain capacity to be able to do it, a certain coordination. And especially after traumas, one has to have the right level of challenge for the children, for the adults. Theodore has also worked with exercises with the legs. And the legs are very important for what we call the upbuilding forces. From an embryological point of view, the legs are where the placenta came in, and this is connected to the metabolic system. And when we do exercises with the legs, we are anchoring our metabolic system. And we connect to this anchor, and we're able to bind ourselves there. So we'll start in a very simple way, pointing to the front and to the back. Front and back. Now the other way around, back and forward. Just do this a few times, swapping around each time. And now we have 5 toes, and we will use our fingers now. So we have a thumb and all the 4 fingers, and we don't say, we refer to the big toe and the small toe, but we don't have a pointing toe and a middle toe and a ring toe the way we do have with fingers. So that's why I'm going to number the toes now. And if you've got your shoes on, you can press your big toe down into the earth, and then the second toe, pressing it down. The little Dutch text, the little boy wanted to eat something before he went to bed. And now we are looking at Myrtha's exercises. When I'm going to the front with 1, it's the big toe pressing in. And when I go back with the second toe, and then I change in the second toe, and at the front, the big toe, second toe, second toe, big toe, second toe, second toe, big toe, second toe, second toe, big toe. Now we're going to do diagonally to the back, and the consciousness in the 4th toe, which would be equivalent to the ring finger, the 4th toe, and pointing to the front, the 3rd toe. We turn this around, the 3rd and the 4th. Why? Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. And the explanation is we don't just have the correspondence between the toes, the 10 fingers and the 10 toes, but we also have the teeth. And if you think of the milk teeth, then you have 10 and 10 above and below, and they don't grow in the chronological, but they grow 1, 2, 4, 3, 5. And this sequence helps us to work with the upbuilding forces that we carry from the embryological times, from the beginning, 1, 2, 2, 1, 4, 3, 3, 4, and to the sides with the smallest toe on the left and on the right. The whole slowly, the big toe, the second toe, big toe, fourth toe, third toe, fourth toe, baby toe, and baby toe. And now we'll do this a little bit faster. 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, 4, 4. Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. Starts with 4 and it goes to 3. You have a lot of time to practice. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. If you can do this with a patient or with somebody who needs it, you can do it slowly or faster as their capacity is. And now the question from Marietta, what do I do with those who are not able to come to a resting? I can jump. And you don't have to have the toes quite so exact. And a third time, a bit slower. So we have the spatial orientation and also a structuring until we have noticed how it is, and then bringing the body consciousness right down into the toes. And we are able to gather those in who are not able to focus, who are quite labile, and people who can't come to themselves because it's too dangerous, too difficult. And some people are completely out of themselves. And so the point is, so you can also do this with children in the primary school, and you'll notice their legs just go flying everywhere in all directions. And for children of that age, that is allowed. Now the question is, how do you bring them from out there to the inner space? And Valentine gave us a good basis. And so because of that, I can take this step now. Our organs react in a special way to a trauma, and the lungs lift, you could say, and we need to bring them down, so to speak. And when the lung is in its element, it comes down, right down to the feet. This is an organ which connects us to the earth. And we speak of the etheric lung. I don't have to touch the lung as such, so it is a bit bigger. And the etheric lung goes deep right down to right below the feet. And of course, it's not the lungs themselves. And after trauma or after a shock, it can raise up and it doesn't come down again. And you try and guide the hands, and you notice that the hands don't come down. And their feet also, they're not able to have their feet under control. And you try and somebody who's got something a bit like restless legs, and you try and get the legs under control. And this etheric lung connected to the legs, you have to get them protected and into a safe space so that the lung knows where it is allowed to be. I was recently with a very ill lady with a strong case of PTSD, post-traumatic. And I tried to experience her lungs, and the lungs were way up. And the etheric suction movement, you can just see that the person is flying up. They are out of themselves. And how do I get them back down again? How do I get the etheric lungs down so that the person has earth beneath their feet, so they are grounded? And when I say that Valentine prepared us so well, I mean that each person can develop the possibility to feel this. And it may not happen straight away, but I'd like to show you how I do it and how it could happen. So we have already done eurythmy. And some people feel that the air may be a little bit warmer, a little bit denser around them. And in this etheric space around, we enter into this etheric space, and there we find that the air is a bit denser, the air is more substantial, and I feel that my hands are floating on something, and you can feel, are they pulling up, or are they pulling down? When the forces are in the right place, the lungs, my hands would be able to go down into the earth. And how do I find this feeling? Valentine had this exercise where he wanted us to feel our lower arm, our upper arm, our lower arm, our hands, in our fingers, in the tips of our fingers, as though the arms become lighter and lighter. And maybe this doesn't work just the first time. And you can connect this with the question, show me where the lung is. Show me what the situation is of the lungs. Up, lower arm, upper arm, lower arm, hand, fingers. And then you can feel this kind of floating feeling. And my arms become light, and the air feels as though the air has more substance. And then I've reached the point, and I can practice this by myself first, this inner space. It has a feeling of the lungs, but it's a little bit bigger, as though I have an inner space here, almost like a beehive. And inside this beehive, I have my lungs, and I can say, how are you, lungs? Where are you, lungs? And I can feel that my hands and arms go down? Or do they sort of stop somewhere? Or do they want to float upwards? And that which we did with the feet in all the different variations is a very good exercise to bring the lungs down to earth again. To say to the lungs, come, let's go down. We'll manage this together. You can come down again. You'll feel better, and I'll feel better. And you don't have to be up there floating around. It was just because of the shock. And so now, after these jumps, then I don't jump it, but I'm thinking about the toes and see how I can spread myself. So this feeling of what's in the hands, I'm spreading myself out. I have this feeling that my toes are spreading out. And then I go back to the jumps. If you're thinking about this from a musical point of view, we're in the seventh, the interval of the seventh. And then we go back down, descending to the sixth, and back up to the seventh, and then down to the fifth, up to the seventh, and down to the fourth, the seventh and the third, the seventh and the second, the seventh and the prime. And I can arrive in myself in the octave. If you want to think of this in a musical way, that's wonderful, but it's not necessary. Many patients are challenged too much if you start working with them with intervals. You don't have to sing them, you don't have to mention them, but we do have them in the way our body is built up. We have the world harmony, the cosmic harmony in us, in our body, embodied. And as you know, in the second, in the upper arm, the third, the major and minor in the lower arm, in the root of the hand or in the wrist, the fourth, in the hand, the fifth, in the fingers, the sixth, and the seventh in the tips of the fingers, shaking and we have it in a very similar way in the legs. In the upper legs, the second, the third in the lower legs, the fourth in the heel, and in the arch, the quint, the possibility of spreading out in the toes, and then as much as you can, do this kind of flipping, flacking movement with the legs for the seventh. Theodore, please stop me. What is the time limit? So she's going to work until 10 to and then have time for questions. So we have quite a lot of time still to go through this lung melody, this lung which we discovered was much too high, and we want to bring it down. And if we can't feel it, it doesn't matter. You can still do it. It doesn't hurt to do this exercise. And if I discover my lungs or my husband's lungs are much too high, then you just realize that this person has not come back to themselves after the shock, after the trauma. Then I would really do it, really suggest it as an upbuilding. I will say the intervals, but they are not important. You can do it without. Seventh. So spreading out in all directions. The sixths. And then back to the seventh. And then the fifth. You can actually walk, take steps with the fifth. Diagonal once again. And sideways. And coming back to the middle and a moment of rest. And then again the seventh. And then right into the heels. Coming down into the heels, arriving in the heels. The fourth. You could press into the heels through a little step, especially feeling in the heels, but you can also just do it in standing and feeling the heels. And then the seventh. And then down into the calves. The directions that we had before. And when you're going to the front, you experience the shins. And when you're going to the back, you experience more the calves. And also the same with the diagonal in the lower leg. And also sideways. The lower leg has an outer surface. And then standing on the spot, using the upper leg and then pause, coming to rest. You could do the seventh once again. We will leave that for the moment. And then feel the resonance of the exercise. How is it working in me? How do I feel? And then working with someone else, you have to see how much time you can spend in the resonating, in the echo, because if they're traumatized, they may not be able to hold it for very long. So in 2009, when I was in Georgia, I did my master in a village in Georgia, and there was somebody with 12 years old with red hair and really a street child all over the place. And it was my master. And there were all sorts of questionnaires, beginning and end of the whole process. And at the end, the question, at the beginning, the question, 14 children of the 7th and 8th class, what did they expect? And this was a Georgian anthroposophical doctor. And they were asked, what would they expect of music and movement? And this girl who, with the red hair all over the place, oh, it was a boy, he expected to change his life. And I thought, wow, this is a big challenge. And after 2 weeks, I was a little bit excited, a little bit wondering about whether his expectations would be met. And he said, and I was totally amazed, yes, my expectations were fulfilled. For the first time ever in my life, I experienced quiet. And I could not imagine that it would be so wonderful. And these are the gifts that we can take after such work. These are big gifts and presents to us. So whenever I have to think about quiet and resonance, I have to think of Georgia. And I think the future of eurythmy lies in the social tasks that the world brings us more and more. Eurythmy connects with all arts, with painting, with modeling, with drama, with music, with dance, and connects me to myself and to you, and around us, connects us with ourselves. So for today, we've ended our series of exercises, but we will continue, and I hand over to Theodore. Myrtha, first of all, thank you so much with the exercises that you've worked with us. Maybe there will be a few questions. And Myrtha is responsible for START, ST and ART. And we would like to offer something. And so we have prepared something for you. We have many Ukrainian here today, and START is also working in Ukraine. And we have a page you will find a page in Ukrainish, and you will see that START is offering something in May, 4 workshops of 3 hours each. And the aim is to have many different therapists and pedagogues, teachers, different types of therapists. It's open to everybody who's working with children in need. Teachers, therapists, helpers, volunteers. Some of the page is not fully translated yet, and we wanted to share this with you. And the teaching will be spoken in Ukrainish, Ukraine. So Myrtha will be translated. And thank you for the commitment to this, and there's a little bit of time left for questions. Wonderful. So amazing, the exercises that you did with the earthquake and then with the floods and all this trauma. How are you? And I am fine, and maybe this is strange, but if I wasn't well doing this work, then I would not be able to help. And every doctor has to connect to the patient, but not actually suffer with the patient. And I've been doing this for 15 years. And I work in these awful places where people have lost everything, where their houses are broken down. And the stories of each person, they always touch my heart, even as it did on the first day. And it's not often that we're able to speak the language. We don't hear everything. So we can only work with what we think is helpful for the children and what is stabilizing. So the youngster who she was working with, has he become an emergency teacher? She says, well, he was only 12, so she can't say. But when I visited the second time, it was quite amazing to see how he had improved and how different exercises were done in different ways. And some of them said I'd worked with them for 2 months. Some of them said I've been doing them all the time. And I found the children to be in a relatively stable state. And that's something that happens in this emergency teaching situation, that you don't actually work with the people for years, which as a therapist you would like to, and you can deepen things only just a tiny bit. And if there are young colleagues or new colleagues, I say, we sow seeds. We know the seeds are good, and the heavens have to help us. Rain and sunshine need to come, and many seeds will grow, and some will not. Nobody can save the world alone, but everybody does their little bit. Another 2 questions, and perhaps just very brief answer to a question where you could answer for 2 hours. So an exercise helping you to sleep. Our devotion. Aha. You probably know this. This is a very, so please explain this just briefly. So you do the R, the angle, look at the day, everything that has entered you from the day, and then you let go of what has happened to you during the day with a ha. And allow the heavens to take it up. You don't have to carry it. Do it a few times, up till 10 times, opening yourself to what you've received in the day, and then letting it all go to the back, giving it over to the heavens. Don't have to carry it yourself. And you noticed after 3 or 4 times that your face relaxes, the muscles become soft, and the whole nerves are calmed down. So you can try this out and comment in the chats. The last question. So you spoke about the upper legs, the lower legs. What about people who've had really bad trauma? And some people don't even feel their legs. How do you work with that? There are many, many exercises for these people. With the legs, you can massage the feet, you can massage the toes until they feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 each toe. Massage, especially also the arms, brings the astral body that's been shocked out, brings it back closer. And if you've got an oil that smells nice, that also helps. You can do B, and you can do M, stroking with the M. And if you've got tension, pressing into the muscles with D, that's also a possibility. If somebody can say, I don't feel myself, then that is a very good first step, because a lot of people don't even notice that. They just sort of function. But to notice that they are not at home in their own bodies, that is not a given. So everything takes time. We need to allow time, need to be creative, use massage. And what you showed us in a living way to find the people where they're at and to recognize, where am I, and come to myself. And you've really explained this to us. So for smaller children, you can pick up little bits of cloth with the toes. And there are many different exercises for the feet. And that is one which is good for adults, especially if you want to then take it to the next step with the intervals, where you can then go into all the parts of the body for the different intervals. That is, however, of course, an advanced exercise, and you can do it as simple and reduced as you need. And thank you, Myrtha. And in May, we want to offer this possibility on many different areas to come together to help people. And we have 3 hours where we have time for sharing. And in the many different disciplines, with an art therapist, with a kindergarten teacher, with music, with different arts, how the arts work together, and all the developmental steps in their own way. Our orientation in space. You can't do that really you can do that in painting. And this crossing over of the legs, you can also do with other artistic. And some of the therapists don't know about these connections and don't know, and they ask, what can I do? And with the trauma conference, we want things to come about. Thank you, Myrtha. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Thank you for your attention. And despite all the electronic difficulties,